From the Australian Taxpayers Alliance, this is Adipod. I'm your host, Emilio Garcia. All right, welcome back to Adipod. Welcome back from the holiday that we took, and happy Almost Australia Day. I'm here with Emily Dye, our policy director, and our executive director, Brian Marlowe. How are you?
Good.
Doing well.
So one of the changes that we're making to Adipod is that we're going to start with a weekly roundup of news items that we found relevant about Australia. And this wasn't this week, but I thought that this was relevant to talk about. The incoming TAFE NSW chief and his salary.
Yeah.
What do we think of that?
Well, I mean, I was contacted by the Daily Telegraph to talk about that. So basically, on some background, there's a new head of TAFE in New South Wales. He's a close friend of the Berejiklian government. Has worked with the Berejiklian government over the years. So they parachuted him into the top job, and they gave him about a 20% to 30%, depending on where the cap lies, pay increase on top of the already existing maximum cap. So the maximum cap was, say, like $375,000 a year, and they went, let's give him 20% more than that on top of it, based on no real reason why.
I believe Gladys is making 400 and something, and he's making 500 and something.
Yeah. So
right.
he's making more than the state premier to run TAFE at a time when the education results are plummeting.
Yeah, well, throwing government money at things tends to fix things, so that's good. Okay, so Jackie Lambie recently finalized the cashless debit card fact-finding mission, and it seems one of her concerns, and I find this interesting, is that she's like, well, we're going to cede all this power to banks to control welfare now. So this is something I hadn't considered. This is actually, I think Jackie Lambie brings up a really good point.
She actually does. I hadn't thought about that.
We don't want them to have the cash, but now we're giving all this power to the banks to control the welfare access.
And primarily the big four banks.
Yeah, of course.
It's interesting. As usual, they tend to like power.
You mean the same banks that want to ban cash?
Yeah, those ones.
We're getting to that a little bit later. But I find it interesting, and I think it's worth discussing. Because I hadn't thought of how you would be able to give someone a cashless card without going through a big bank, but definitely thought that was worth checking into. Mackenzie, she's in a bit of a pickle. That senator, she seems to be generous with our money.
Yes, Bridget McKenzie.
Weren't you recently on some news program on
some kind of televisional show?
Weren't you?
Yeah, that would be Sky last night.
Nice.
Talking about this issue. We just keep finding out more and more about these sports rorts.
Yes. So Mackenzie's obviously the main.
Yes, the controversy
focus
is surrounding Bridget McKenzie primarily, as she's the one that's in charge of issuing these grants. Though different ministers have stepped in and gotten money for their pet projects. An example would be Greg Hunt managing to get $170,000 for a yacht club, because we all know yacht clubs need more money. And
yeah, if someone was to ask me, like, what kind of sporting groups don't have money, I would say the ones with giant boats.
Yeah.
I'd say we really need to subsidize
with $100,000 boats. They're really suffering.
More than that, but yes. It's that kind of stuff that makes...
the cheaper end of like a little boat would be.
It's that kind of stuff that makes me realize that I don't have that much money. It's like how much does a boat cost? And someone will be like, I don't know, $100,000. It's like, no, like $300,000 for a good yacht.
You should apply to get that job working for TAFE.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be hard to get better results than we're already getting.
I wonder what kind of yacht he has.
Well, I don't know. One made of lungs, I'm guessing. Okay, so we in Sydney made an investment in putting a light rail in the CBD that has been incredibly successful. Wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, it's working great.
We've had no problems.
There's nice
there's not been a
benches sitting on the road so people can go and they rest their legs. A comfortable compartment.
So it broke down
numerous times.
So it broke down again recently. It broke down this week.
It broke down the day that they opened it. So
of course.
The day that they launched it, it broke down. It broke down again this week. It couldn't run when it was raining because I guess they didn't factor in that Sydney rains.
Right. But in their defense, how could they ever know that it would ever rain in Sydney?
Well, climate change has stopped rain, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't rain anymore. That's a thing of the past, right?
Scott Morrison started the bushfires, so he must have started these bad rains as well, right?
Which are going to increase CO2 emissions. I'm not sure if you are aware. But when the rains came and really helped out the fires, the big issues, and I was like, oh, well, yeah, but we're going to get more fires later on because there's going to be more CO2 emissions. So essentially it did break down. The first time that it broke down, I found it hilarious. They had more testing hours for it than like the
so
program
apparently the New South Wales trams or the Sydney trams had more testing hours before going to market essentially than the space shuttle program in the US.
Yeah, like back in the first one.
The
one that actually put a person on the moon. Well, they didn't take into consideration...
space shuttle program, the actual shuttles, not the
moon.
Not the orbit. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so not Apollo, whatever.
Yes.
But what they didn't factor in was that there were going to be people on these trams and that people weigh amounts. And so the trams were doing great, and then people get on.
I don't weigh anything.
You weigh very little, but all of us together, I'm sure. So that was fun. And I don't even know why it broke down this time. I think it was the rain this time, or
there was one breakdown because it rained.
Yeah.
There was another one. There was one where they shut it down because there were too many people in the CBD. Because city business districts tend to have people.
Yeah. Which is also something there's no way they could have known. There's we're being too hard on them. They could have never known that people weigh amounts and that they also congregate in city centers, right? That's just something that a government would not be capable of.
And it rains.
That's right. But obviously this was a big issue for their commuter.
And I don't want to criticize the light rail too much because it's not like it cost us $3 or $4 billion of taxpayer money to roll out something that doesn't work when we have perfectly good buses that work rain, hail, or shine. And have worked for decades. Yeah, well, of course we could have done buses, but don't you prefer to instead spend billions of dollars putting a couple of metal rods in the ground?
Yeah. Also, warning to all cyclists: do not ride your bicycle over those metal rods. It really hurts.
Really?
Oh yeah, you'll crash. Oh. You cannot drive a bicycle over those things. Well, unless you go at the right angle, but it's hard to get that.
Wow. Okay, well, that essentially wraps up our weekly news review. It was a good one this week. What I want to talk about, to begin with, is Labour overtaking the Liberals in polling. So, obviously, the Liberals won the unwinnable election, or Labour lost the unlosable election, and then something happened, can't put my finger on it, and suddenly it seems that people are dissuaded from the Liberals. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, there's a saying that sort of goes around the traps in politics. Like, if you don't pick a side, you just get run down the middle. And that's exactly what's happening to Scott Morrison, right? So, parliamentary calendar ended last year. MPs went on holidays, including the Prime Minister. He put Michael McCormack in as Deputy Prime Minister. Then there were bushfires, and they're really bad. And it's some of the worst bushfires we've ever seen.
Yep.
He was on holidays. To be honest, I think he probably could have defended that position and been like, no, I actually fully trust Michael McCormack to handle this. I'm also more than capable because we have what are called telephones and the internet to take care of things as needed.
Right.
But in any case, he came back because people that would never vote for him and never did vote for him were saying that he basically started the bushfires because Hawaii.
Yes.
He then came back, but the issue is he then went on this weird groveling apology tour. So rather than coming back and then going, you know what, we're going to support firefighters, we're going to fight these fires, and here's what we're going to do to help the people in the areas, and we're going to tackle this head on. There's footage of him awkwardly trying to grab a woman's hand to shake it and
please shake.
Yeah, just, and I think people seeing that that's not leadership material.
He also lied, which I found a little bit shady when asked, I think it was by an ABC presenter, he said, okay, so ScoMo, you came out and said that it's always been the position of your government that extreme weather events such as these bushfires are, in fact, linked to climate change.
Mm-hmm. When in actual fact, it has never been the position of the Liberal Party.
It's always explicitly been, especially of those close to ScoMo.
Yeah.
They aren't, and they aren't, by the way. At least it doesn't appear to...
Yeah,
they don't appear to be. But, so he lied to that, then he went on this apology tour. He granted his attackers the premise that, in fact, it was his fault because in the amount of time that he's been in office, he could have stopped climate change fully. And then, surprise, surprise, Labour's doing better than Liberals.
Yeah, well, I think the issue is like you come back, you don't act like a leader, you allow the other side to completely, run you ragged on how to actually respond to this. Like, I couldn't see John Howard doing this. John Howard was a pretty strong leader. I couldn't see Tony Abbott doing this. I think that they would handle this much better. And I think that's where a lot of sort of swing voters have just kind of turned off Scott Morrison. Yeah. I also disagree with the idea that the Liberals won the last election. I think that Labor lost it. Yeah. And they lost it because they ran a climate election. They ran an election on climate change and they got completely smashed because Australians don't want to lose their jobs or have more expensive electricity so that someone can feel good because they get their power from kombucha or
monsters.
Yeah.
I think Australians know that Australia isn't the biggest contributor to climate change. We're actually a very small contributor based on the statistics that are even being presented by the climate catastrophists and the people who think the world's ending. Yeah. In 12 years, I think it is, or what's the most recent date? When are we going to die?
It's already ended.
It's at a time frame that is far enough ahead that they don't have to really point to anything.
Yeah, and they can adjust.
And they can adjust it.
Got it. Okay.
So 12 years will go by, and they'll be like, "What we meant was 12 years at some point." Yeah, exactly.
Starting sometime in the future.
Yeah, yes. It's been 12 years since the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. But even they agree. We're not the statistics what they're presenting. Yeah. Show that Australia has a very small contribution to climate change.
Oh yeah, of course it does. To emissions.
Emissions, and yes, we export coal, but our coal is so much cleaner and so much better than the coal produced by other countries like China. When we export our coal to China, we're probably
there are
reducing
fewer emissions.
Yeah, to India as well, right? That's one of the... I really like this game that a lot of catastrophists play, where if you take into account our coal exports, we have the highest emissions per capita in the world. Which is okay, what you're doing there is you're playing a very strange emissions per capita, which...
Yeah, emissions per capita, and they're pretending that these countries couldn't get coal from other nations. The reason they buy it from us is that our coal is better and it burns more efficiently.
Well, coal that other people are burning, we have to attribute. Why would you take that into consideration? Yeah, sure. If we take into consideration the emissions of the United States as well, but why would we do that? We're not burning it, and furthermore, they would produce more CO2 if we didn't. But yeah, now we're getting kind of just off topic, just because we like to deny that the climate exists. I've never seen it. But yeah, so Labour definitely have you ever seen it? Have you ever seen Bill Shorten and the climate in the same place at the same time?
I don't know.
No. Well, I mean, we stopped him, so...
Yeah, that's true. So now he decided to become the climate. Anyway, so that was stupid, but now we can get into an actually important topic. Sports Rorts. Let's get back to that a little bit. Yeah, Mackenzie isn't the only person on the hook for this, and neither is the Minister of Death, Greg Hunt. Who else? What else is going on?
We've got a whole list of Liberal MPs and ministers. ScoMo's also on that list.
Good.
People that are apparently in trouble for these sports Rorts. I don't know exactly where that list is coming from, but yes, they are using taxpayer money to try to gain support because the Liberals have lost a lot of support recently due to things like bushfires and climate change and sitting on the fence. Yeah. And so they're trying to make up for that by buying the hearts of people back with taxpayer money.
I'd say I don't even understand. Let's just leave, and we can't really believe I'm saying this, but let's just leave the taxpayer-funded side of it, as to the side, right? Wow. Which is already egregious. Just policy-wise, how exactly are you building votes amongst, the everyday swing voter by giving $170,000 to a yacht club or $15 million to the Swans? The Sydney Swans don't need money. They're the Sydney Swans.
I think the answer to that is they're not giving money to the people that are going to vote. They're giving money to the people that are going to donate.
Yeah.
So people that attend yacht clubs and golf clubs and tennis clubs, they're the people that can write checks to political campaigns.
Yeah, that makes sense. It is getting a little muddy, though, right? Because I did see a story about, who was it? Maybe it was Abbott, and there were some grants given in his district as well. But this is a program that exists that gives money to different sports organizations.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's not always. So now what I think is happening, it's also they're going on the attack because it's clearly been a fruitful line of attack for people who maybe deserve it. And they're just turning it on anyone. It's like, hey, this youth center in your community got some money. That's corruption. Like, well.
Yeah, and I think that is something that we should be aware of. Like, not everyone on that list is actually guilty of fraud or Rorts. But a lot of them are. Bridget McKenzie's the perfect example. She gave $36,000 to a gun club that she's a member of.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the issues is that there's probably maybe 5 to 10 actually egregious examples where it's like, Greg Hunt did backroom dealing to get a grant for a yacht club in his electorate.
Sure.
Bridget McKenzie put $36,000 of taxpayer funds towards her own gun club, essentially.
Yeah.
Or a gun club that she's a member of. Yeah. Those are the egregious examples. The issue is that more broadly, this happens Labor or Liberal. The Labor Party does it as well. So it's across the board. It is rich for the Labor Party of all groups who have never seen a spending measure that they didn't like, have never seen a tax they didn't like, to criticize for this kind of stuff because they do this shit all the time.
Mm-hmm. And it also should be noted, the Labour Party has done this and has faced the consequences of this in the past. The exact same thing happened in the 90s. And the sports minister actually lost her job over at Ross Kelly.
Wow.
She resigned because this exact same thing, these exact same kind of grants, they had, it was the whiteboard scandal where apparently they'd written these clubs that were most deserving of the funds on a whiteboard and they erased it. And so she's like, no, these were the ones that we picked as most deserving. Everyone's like, but why are they in such key districts? Why are they your big donors? And she ended up having to resign over it.
Good. Well, right now we're going to have an investigation, apparently, into McKenzie. I think...
Who's heading that up?
I don't know. Honestly, this is something that I just kind of saw. Like, it hasn't actually played out, but it's being referred, as they say. So after defending vehemently her actions, the same party that defended her is now actually investigating it, which I'm all for. I'm all for the investigation. So let's move on now to the... sorry, Emily, did you have something?
I was just going to add, yes, I fully support these investigations. And we need to remember, this isn't a partisan issue.
Yeah.
Like, it's being presented as a partisan issue.
It's a taxpayer issue.
It's a taxpayer issue. It's not, we're attacking liberals. It's we're attacking politicians who misuse taxpayer funds.
Yeah.
Taxpayers are all stripes of politics.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's move on to the cash ban. Now, this is something that... this is coming soon. It's most likely going to, not if we can do anything about it ourselves, but this is most likely going to pass. This is a ban, essentially, on... There's a simple version of what is actually going to be enacted, but it's essentially a ban on transactions over $10,000 Australian with a single entity.
Yes.
Now, there are exceptions, and there's different ways in which that will be implemented, but would you say that's more or less...
Yeah, it's not necessarily a single entity, but it's a single purchase. So if you, say, buy a car, and you buy that car over various payments, that car is still, it would still count. So you decide to buy a $15,000 car, and you're making cash payments. You bought it from a dealer.
Yeah.
That is illegal now.
Well, up until $10,000.
It will be illegal.
Yeah.
They have some exemptions where it's like, well, if you did it as a one-time purchase, maybe it's not illegal, but... there's a lot of traps that they've set up, right? The purpose is to basically limit the amount of cash transactions so that you have to go through a payment process or a banking system. They claim it's about fighting terrorism. They claim it's about limiting tax evasion and all that kind of stuff. Every single study into that shows that never happens. It's literally just to increase the tax take and benefit some of the organisations that donate lots of money to major parties.
Yeah, but let me see, I'm confused, because what you're saying is that criminals aren't going to follow the law?
Yeah, I hadn't considered that.
This is, I think you're
committing
grasping
crimes
straws
is
here.
illegal.
Yeah, that's true. It's forbidden by law. So
Yeah.
really shouldn't go.
Someone should probably tell those
would
criminals that it's illegal, and then they'll just stop.
yeah, it'll probably happen. But here's my question. Let's say it's not for a single purchase. Let's say I trade with you, Brian, for some very expensive piece of equipment that for some reason I have to buy regularly.
Yep.
And I buy it from you 6 times, and each one is $4,000. But for individual items.
You broke the law.
Yes.
Even if it's not just payments on a singular thing above.
You broke the law. If you're a farmer and you're buying, the example you gave at the Senate inquiry was you're buying, a second-hand header for your combine harvester, they're easily worth more than $10,000. Now, maybe as a one-off transaction, they'll turn a blind eye. They'll go, "Yep, it was one time over $10,000 to another person, but what if you need to buy some other agricultural equipment from the same person and it's over?" Like it gets to a point where
Sure.
They're just creating the trap to basically strangle you out. And you grew up on a farm. I don't know many farmers that only rely on internet banking.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, we don't even have solid internet where I'm from. It's not consistent. I think that's something that's also happened with the bushfires.
Yes.
Internet is not consistent, and a lot of these people have been resorting to cash because they cannot make online purchases, online transactions. None of that's working.
Yeah. And I think another point that just kind of gets lost in the greater debate is, what about people that like to use cash and they should have the right to use cash?
Yes. This is the thing. It's something that I sort of mentioned at the inquiry, which was there's this whole narrative around the idea that even just transacting in cash above a certain value, something dodgy must be going on and you need to report. It's like there's nothing actually ethically wrong. Is it legal tender? Yes. Am I committing a crime? No.
Yeah.
So why does this need to be banned?
Right.
The ATO's got more than enough powers to audit people, and they do all the time.
Right.
We hear horror stories about people getting completely screwed by the ATO.
By the audit itself, not even by the results.
Yeah, exactly. Just by the process of the audit.
Yeah.
Like the process is the punishment.
Then at the end you're guilty. You're bankrupt, but you're not guilty.
Yes.
And these businesses that are making transactions in cash over $10,000, they're already required to write those transactions down and record them.
Of course.
Like, they're not allowed to just sneakily give $10,000. That's not legal.
Right.
Like, we don't need another law. We already have a law that stops that or is meant to stop that.
And has always been pretty good at stopping that. Like,
Sure.
at the end of the day, I can't just invent $10,000. I still have to account where that came from.
Exactly.
And the $10,000 then disappearing from my account. I can't just be like, I can't turn around to the ATO and just be like, I don't know.
I just took it.
It just
left
went
it
somewhere.
somewhere.
It just went somewhere. What are you talking about? Like, that doesn't work. That's how you get audited.
Right.
It's a crappy bill created by crappy banks.
I think you mean shitty bill.
That's actually on the Senate Hansard.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. For reference for our listeners, at the Senate inquiry, Emily told the committee representatives that it was a quote-unquote shitty bill. And thankfully that appears on the Senate Hansard, so that's there forever.
Yeah.
And you can
And
now
it was
look
very
that up.
casual.
It was very
You
casual.
just kind of, it's shitty bill, yada yada. It was good.
I didn't even think about it.
It was fantastic. Yeah, it was really good stuff. Well, I think that that does it for this week. It's slow because Australia hasn't started up yet from vacation.
Yeah, Australia's very interesting. We close for Christmas like 4 weeks before Christmas or something. Well, we didn't, but a lot of people do. And then, the economy just kind of stops until the end of January, and then Australia gets going again. It's like 2 months of just not knowing what day it is and thinking beer is good.
Yeah, I think on Tuesday, Australia opens officially, but Wednesday is really the day because Tuesday,
Yeah, Tuesday. I mean, you're in, but you're not working.
Exactly. So Emily, closing comments?
Closing comments. Oh, probably that has something to do with their sneaking that cash ban thing in.
Oh, yeah.
So the 30th is the day that we're having the hearings. So if you'd like to attend those are in Sydney. And then on the 7th of February is the vote on the cash ban bill.
Yeah, actually, maybe we should just sort of end on that, which is that this is clearly designed to just be rushed through. They only agreed to have an inquiry into the merits of the bill after a backlash in Parliament. But the way they've stacked it up, they agreed to the inquiry, they announced it, they gave us like 4 days to prepare and provide evidence, and then go and attend. The next one is, just after people get back from Christmas break, and then they're going to vote on the bill at the end of the month. It's designed to get through with as little resistance as possible.
But we're working very, very, very hard and putting other priorities on hold to really push this. So please, anyone who's interested, please check out our website, consider donating or becoming a member, or just go on our website to see what we have to say about the issue. But for now...
Tweet your MP.
Oh, yes. We have a new tool. We'll be announcing that soon. But for now, we will leave it there. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.